Hello, I'm Charlotte Fuller. Today I'm going to be talking to Paul Ronan from City Practitioners. We're going to be talking about the retail FX space and to understand why so many investment banks are interested in moving into this market. Hello, Paul.
Good morning.
Paul, you're a managing practitioner at City Practitioners, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
You've spent a number of years, I believe, working with banks active in the foreign exchange markets. We're seeing some interesting developments in the sector, aren't we, really? I believe a lot of banks are getting very interested in the retail foreign exchange market, aren't they?
Well, yes, they are, and the retail foreign exchange market, it's been active for about 10 years now. But what we've seen over the last 5 years is an increase in sophistication, which has started to attract the higher end banks, the tier 1s, the tier 2s
Right.
and tier 3s, into this market space, because now those people are trading more volume on a more regular basis, and there is more margin in that market. Whereas the traditional areas the banks have been dealing with, interbank and large corporates and FIs, the margin has disappeared away there, so it's
Right.
no longer as attractive.
Okay, right. So the traditional market is not quite so attractive, but the retail market is growing. Who are the new clients?
Well, it's quite varied, really. It starts off with the high net worth individuals that are seeing
Right.
FX as an attractive product. It goes through to day traders who are sitting at home trying to just speculate in the marketplace. But it also includes small, medium enterprise environments that are
Right.
starting to trade maybe 5 times a week or 2 to 3 times a month.
Right.
And even down to people who are buying homes abroad who need to do maybe one-off transactions.
Okay.
That's happening on a more regular basis now.
Right, so presumably this is shaping the market, and I imagine there's been quite a scramble amongst investment banks to provide
Very much
services.
so.
What sort of new players are we seeing emerge? I mean, if there are new players, that is.
Well, over the last 10 years, specialist houses have grown up, literally reinvented themselves. There's been places that have specialised in facilitating FX on top of moving abroad, so very much coupling with their lifestyle changes. But there's been the more general day trader, high net worth specialised houses, such as Saxo Bank, who've come into the marketplace and have really tried to provide a very quick online dynamic trading service with very quick onboarding, which is very different from the traditional FX market space.
Paul, clearly a lot of investment banks are keen to get into this sector. What sort of challenges are they facing?
But actually there's quite a few challenges. They go from organisational through to cultural, through to the level of activity required in this market space. They are very different.
Right, I mean culturally, for example, I mean what type of challenges are they facing?
Well, towards the retail end, we're talking about very fast onboarding. We're talking about someone sending you their passport, you scan it, you put it in, you do some very simple credit checks, and then they're trading within 48 hours. So that's very aggressive for banks who traditionally had to respond to a know your client environment and fraud and money laundering issues. So culturally that's very different from big banks that are risk averse and have to think about things from a safer environment standpoint.
Right, so I mean obviously these new retail clients vary very greatly in sophistication from banks' traditional clients, so presumably they need to be courted quite a lot. I mean,
well, I think that's the other challenge we have here. Traditionally, the electronic FX market has meant you could be pretty much hands-off. So the investment banks have moved on to the multi-bank or single-bank portals, and they set up the account, it's click and trade, it's very simple. But as you said, the sophistication here is very, very much different. So there's courting in terms of there's a larger need to provide post-sales capability to even help the small individual get their firewall working into your environment, through to understanding what P&L looks like. So really, you in some cases have to teach them how to trade, how to look after their money, and also how to get their technology working as well. So it's a stronger post-service that's required.
Right, so that also means quite a lot of extra work for the bank in terms of sales force and so forth.
Well, in some organisations we're seeing a natural change in terms of how things are tiered. So there's very much a sales force that is pushing for connectivity, solving any small issues on the platform. There's also a sales force that has to follow behind that says for the higher, more specialised individual, maybe moving towards an advisory and treating them like a bit of a specialist in the marketplace. And there's also a continual need to push and attract the client. Some of the retail organisations have found that the client maybe trades for the first 30 days and then he starts to churn. He goes and looks at other platforms.
Right.
So in reality, this has a bit of a feel like the mobile phone market,
Okay.
where you have to stop the churn happening. You have to continue to attract the investor or the speculator back to your platform with new features and making the platform easier to use, maybe 3-4 times a year, doing big changes to the platform, because it has to be easy, but it needs a lot of high touch with the individual.
Right. Presumably, banks will also need to make changes to the technology that they use.
Well, there's a couple of challenges in terms of you have to work out where the target client is that you're going
Right.
after. And this can lead to quite a lot of regional specialisation. There's also the challenge that quite a lot of the retail investors see this as a way of speculating or almost betting. So if you think of it in the very low end of the marketplace, a bit like the spread betting or sort of like gambling online, and at the high end, someone trying to satisfy some very small, almost treasury-like operations, there is a need to provide quite a diverse technology set in terms of online product coverage, which often has to spread outside of FX, but also the amount of post-trade organisation and the amount of clearing and physical clearing activity you need to provide the smaller medium enterprise players as well.
Yes, so I should imagine quite a lot of expenses involved for the banks.
Well, there's a level of expense, but what's probably just as interesting as the expense side is the level of continual activity and the level of extending your services. I think most banks are used to upgrading their e-commerce FX platform on a twice yearly basis. When you're trying to bid for maybe between 25 and 250,000 high net worth individuals, small enterprises, they're all looking to pull you in different directions, and they're all giving that pull in terms of what the rest of the competition is trying to attract them to. So there's quite a lot of basis for you to figure out, to cover, and which ones are important for you to go after. So it's quite frantic. It's frantic delivery. It is retail. It has that feel of, attracting the shoppers into your
Right.
window space.
Yes. So would you or could you give some advice to banks looking to, let's say, cut a few corners in terms of the expense that they face in order to keep these clients happy?
I think the first thing the bank has to think about is what retail client base they're going after,
Right.
what level of sophistication exists,
Mm-hmm.
and how well they can satisfy A, the functionality, but B, the servicing of that client, how they get on board, how they keep them on board, how they relate to them and help them to continue to use the platform. Those are all very big challenges.
And technologically, I mean, is there anything they can do to make life somewhat easier for themselves?
Technology-wise, I think it's about making it more client-facing. It's about taking the existing sophistication for an interbank or a large corporate FI branding and taking it to a level of sophistication that your high net worths and day traders can understand. So
Right.
it's about simplification. But simplification doesn't mean a lack of technology. In anything, it probably means more aggressive use of technology onto the desktop.
Right. And we hear a good deal about, for example, white labelling. Is that something that can play a role in this area?
Well, I think there are people who have a successful retail branding out there. And what's interesting is there's an actual tiering. So the big retail outfits in the market today are able to brand out to either lower levels of retail capability
Yes.
or retail houses that are not in the FX space.
Right.
So there are equity or future houses that would like to offer a wider gamut of products to their client base. So these people are looking to partner aggressively, either with a good retail FX platform that is, or even partner up to the IB space, where they'll get good physical delivery across the world and therefore be able to move up the value chain in terms of away from small markets into the corporate environments.
Right. Paul, finally, for banks either entering or considering entering this market, are there any words of advice or warning you have?
I think the key thing is to think about who you're going after, how you brand, and exactly the force and organisation that you need in your sales area to be able to go after this marketplace. And not just initially capture, but to grow, and to grow without losing churn. I have clients now who have grown their user base in terms of how many users they have, substantially, but they're still seeing a lot of churn. And that's because they're not paying attention to how to keep that retail customer interested in their platform. and providing services that stop them moving away to other retail environments.
Right, so the key is controlling that customer churn then.
Know your customer, capture them, keep them interested, keep the platform refreshed, and know how to service them post onboarding. Those are the key things, and they're organisationally a big challenge as well as on the technology front.
Many thanks, Paul, for your thoughts. That was very interesting.
Thank you.